Hello! I'm Isaac Keller, founder, producer, and curator of the world's first AI-generated theater festival. What you're about to see is a piece of theater that was made in collaboration with GPT-3, one of the world's most sophisticated text-generating AIs. If you're curious about that process or why this festival is happening at all, there should be some links if you click up here on the little eye icon. And if not, just check out the entire channel. There are lots of interviews with these artists showing them experimenting with GPT-3 for the first time. There are 12 original AI-generated theater pieces. Check it out. And thanks for watching. Enjoy this piece as part of the world's first AI-generated theater festival.
Signs of departure.
The following is a conversation with an AI assistant. The assistant is helpful, creative, clever, and very friendly.
Hello, who are you?
I am an AI created by OpenAI. How can I help you today?
Can you tell me about death?
That is a heavy subject. What do you want to know?
Jun Maeda, who died in the pandemic, was a key figure in the early days of Key. His music was used as the base for Clannad, Canon, and Air, as well as Tomio After, It's a Wonderful Life. All of which had their sound direction handled by Jun Maeda. If you've played any of Key's visual novels, chances are you've heard his music. His works usually have a kind of simple, happy sound to them that fits the tone of the series really well. I'd include a link to some of the samples here, but I can't find any good ones in English. The only one I know of is this, which is nice, but it doesn't really give an idea of his style. A lot of Jun Maeda's music has a distinct, happy sound to it. I think that probably comes from the way he arranges songs and plays with sounds. Some of his works have a digital sounding quality to them. In the case of Clannad, he took inspiration from a sound made by an analog synthesizer called PPG Wave 2.1 to create a happy sort of sound that's present in most songs, other than the battle themes, etc. He used this as a base and built on it. And when Tomoya's story began, he started using more of the analog sound in his music. The first song you hear in Clannad is a good example of this style. It's one of my favorites. Two other compositions I'd like to point out are A World with No Sadness and Dango Daikotsu. A World with No Sadness is one of Jun Maeda's most famous works. It was used as a base for Clannad in episode 23, Air, the first opening, and Tomio After, It's a Wonderful Life.
How does one grieve properly?
When someone dies, one should be dressed in clothes that are more colorful than a rainbow. One should look at the body for signs of departure. Finally, one should grieve privately, only leaving the house when they are wearing pajamas.
Raul Hernandez, who died in the pandemic, was born in 1898. He was a native of the state of Coahuila and had been a resident of Mexicali since 1907, where he worked as an employee at the Hotel Imperial when it opened its doors on January 1st, 1918. A plaque depicting Hernandez is located just outside the hotel's entrance along a sculpture depicting the hotel's imperial founder, Enrique Creil. The plaque reads, "Here lay Raul Hernandez, who died at age 38 of Spanish origin. He was dedicated to service and love for his workmates who were friends and family in Mexicali."
What are signs of departure?
Smiles are a sign of departure. Sad faces indicate imminent grief.
Michelle Alexander, who died in the pandemic, was an investigative reporter who was very effective at uncovering the corruption and collusion among the municipal government of New York City, Wall Street firms such as Goldman Sachs, Citigroup, and JP Morgan Chase. The banks have been exposed for their role in laundering drug money from Mexico to fund a series of cartel wars that has broken out across Mexico. Alexander was also an expert on mass incarceration, which exploded under the presidency of Bill Clinton. She wrote extensively about it in her book, The New Jim Crow. She is credited with exposing how thousands of African Americans were sent to prisons for minor drug offenses because they could not afford bail after being charged with low-level crimes like possession or sale. In these cases, bail amounts are usually around 5% of the total given by judges upon conviction. These people can't pay their fines, so they serve time even though their sentences don't exceed more than 1 year based on federal guidelines established when crime rates were lower than today's level. This practice effectively makes them slaves, since private companies make millions off cheap prison labor, while incarcerated prisons get nothing but a bed and prisoners get nothing but a bed and 3 squares a day. As a result, the prison population exploded. It climbed by 8% from 2009 to 2013, and by December 2014, America had 1.6 million inmates in federal and state prisons or local jails, which is the highest level since 1994, when crime rates were much lower than today's levels. Most of these prisoners come from impoverished minority communities like Detroit, where half of all children live below the poverty line. The high incarceration rate has created lucrative business opportunities for companies that provide various services to prison facilities, including food vendors, phone providers, and healthcare firms who are paid millions by government agencies for providing medical services to prisoners, even though privatization means they have little incentive to provide quality service because they don't pay directly for it. Alexander died on June 27th, 2016 at 61, a week after contracting H1N1 influenza A virus, otherwise known as the swine flu. Her father was an African-American civil rights activist who moved his family from Alabama to Northern California so he could get better job prospects with more advanced technology than what he could find in Alabama during Jim Crow era law.
What are the ways in which different cultures grieve?
I will show you 2 examples.
Robert Smith, who died of a coronavirus, was one of 11 people who have died in the UAE from the virus this year. Smith's death was confirmed by his wife, Sharon Smith, who appealed for blood donors on Facebook yesterday morning after her husband passed away overnight at 3 a.m. local time on Sunday. He fought so hard, but it wasn't enough, she wrote on her page. Please, if you can, donate blood. Please do, especially if you are type O. He was a wonderful man, and I will miss him so much. Smith's appeal for blood donors was widely shared on social media, with more than 1,000 people liking her post and hundreds leaving comments of support. While the majority were from Dubai and Abu Dhabi residents, many others were from Smith's home country, Australia. I'm sorry to hear about your husband. I live in Australia, and I would be happy to donate if we have compatible blood types, wrote one person. Another woman said, Sharon, I'm from India, but living in UAE for past 10 years. Please DM me also.
What is the first?
Imagine that you are at a funeral for a man that has recently died. One of his daughters is sobbing by the casket. You look closer and realize that the man is not dead at all, but playing a prank on his daughter.
Randall Yan, who died this year in the pandemic, was a fellow at the Center for Science in the Public Interest and a chief proponent of the sugar-sweetened beverage tax. The tax was an important reason for Seattle's reduced consumption of sugary drinks. We hope that the city and the state will continue to work together to help people in Seattle and throughout Washington state improve their health. Initiative 1634 on the November ballot. The beverage industry likes to frame its opposition to taxes on sugary drinks as a matter of consumer freedom. Initiative 1634, a measure on the November ballot, goes one step further, using the language of rights in its title. Protecting Local Businesses, Washington Jobs Initiative. It proposes to amend the state constitution to prohibit taxation on beverages with added sweeteners. This measure has been opposed by the Board Coalition of Health Organizations, including the Washington State Medical Association, the Washington State Pharmacy Association, and the American Diabetes Association. The measure would limit the efforts of local jurisdictions to increase the availability of healthy beverages like water and make it more likely that people will continue to consume sugary beverages. We urge you to vote no on Initiative 1634.
And the second?
Imagine that you are at a funeral for another man that has recently died. One of his daughters is sobbing by the casket. Another woman over her shoulder notices your dismay and informs you that she has been deceased for years now.
Philip Kahn, who died in the pandemic, was the inventor of the first word processor, the dictaphone, and the first digital camera. The dictaphone was the first personal computer and the first digital device. Kahn was also a pioneer in the field of digital communications. In a time when most of the world was still using telegraphs, Kahn had already developed the first digital telephone. The Kahn family had been a prominent Jewish family for centuries. They were a family of rabbis, and the first Kahn was a rabbi in the 16th century. The family has also produced industrialists and bankers. Philip Kahn was born in New York City in 1920, and he was the son of Rabbi Dr. Joseph Kahn. He attended the Ethical Culture School and then went to the City College of New York, where he graduated Phi Beta Kappa in 1941. He then went to the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, where he studied electrical engineering. He received his master's degree in 1943 and then went to work for Bell Laboratories. In 1945, Kahn married Anne Briskin, and they had 2 children, a daughter Susan and a son David. Kahn was a prolific inventor and innovator, and he was granted more than 200 patents. He invented the first digital camera in 1975, and in 1982, he invented the first digital mobile phone. He also invented the first digital camera for a mobile phone in 2000, and the first digital camera for a PDA in 2003. Kahn was a member of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences, the National Academy of Engineering, and the National Academy of Sciences. He was also a member of the National Inventors Hall of Fame and the National Jewish Hall of Fame. Kahn was a member of the Jewish Theological Seminary of America, and he served on the board of the United Jewish Appeal Federation of New York. He was a member of the American Jewish Congress, the American Jewish Committee, the Jewish Theological Seminary, the Union of Orthodox Jewish Congregations of America, and the American Jewish Historical Society. Kahn was also a member of the American Association for the Advancement of Science, the American Physical Society, the American Association for the Advancement of Science, the American Chemical Society, the American Society of Mechanical Engineers, and the American Geophysical Union. Kahn was the recipient of many awards and honors, including the IEEE Edison Medal.
Third,
Imagine that you are at a funeral for a man that has recently died. One of his daughters is sobbing by the casket. She calls her mother to leave. You look closer and realize that the son is not dead at all, but playing a prank on his mother.
Annie Glenn, who died in the pandemic, was the wife of John Glenn, the first American to orbit the Earth in the Mercury space program. "It's a big deal," said Mary Ann Bauman, director of the Division of Viral Diseases at the CDC. "This is a major pandemic." The CDC said it had been preparing for this pandemic for years. It has stockpiled antiviral drugs and has trained staff and healthcare workers across the country. The CDC has also has been working with state and local health departments to prepare for the pandemic. "We've been working very hard to prepare," said Dr. Julie Gerberding, director of the CDC. "We are prepared." Gerberding said the US was prepared for the worst case scenario, which is a pandemic that is as serious as the 1918-1919 pandemic. She said the US has enough antiviral drugs to treat about 50 million people. The CDC said it's not too late for people to get vaccinated. "The vaccine is safe and it is effective," said Dr. Ann Shushat, director of the CDC's National Center for Immunization and Respiratory Diseases. Shushat said the vaccine is not perfect, but it will help. "The vaccine will reduce the risk of getting H1N1 influenza this fall and winter," Shushat said. The CDC and the vaccine is not recommended for pregnant women, people who have severe allergies to eggs, people who have had a severe allergic reaction to a previous dose of the vaccine, or people who have had the Guillain-Barré syndrome after getting a flu shot in the past. The CDC said the vaccine is also not recommended for people who have a weakened immune system or people who are allergic to latex. "If you are not sure, talk to your doctor," Shushat said. The CDC said it's not too late to get the vaccine. It's not too late to get vaccinated, Gerberding said. "We are still in the peak of the season for flu activity. The CDC said the vaccine is available at doctors' offices, health departments, and retail pharmacies. The CDC said people who have not been vaccinated should contact their doctors or health departments.
Maria Rodriguez, who died in the pandemic, was trying to recover from being raped in 1944 when she contracted the flu. Her spouse also died from the flu, leaving a 5-year-old son behind. The Miracle of La Photographie is an 8th of Garcia Marquez's novels to appear in English, and the latest in a series that has brought international attention to the obscure Colombian village. Jaramillo's grandparents, who fell ill at the same time as Baldomero Marquez, were among 20 victims of the Spanish flu, whose graves were pictured by the Colombian Nobel laureate, Colombian Nobel winner Gabriel Garcia Marquez. They talk about me as if I'm a famous man. They went through the same pains, just as hard, Mr. Marquez said when he first visited his home village with the Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Jean H. Robinson. Here, we're not just ordinary people. School children in the region were taught that Mr. Marquez was born in Puerto Arquia. The village's name was changed to Macondo, and Macondo, where the Nobel Prize winner grew up, became the New York Times bestseller earlier this year.
Amy.
Yeah, that was lovely, you guys. Thank you so much.